I bet you've heard the news that a brand new Sonic racing game is on the horizon, Sonic Racing Crossworlds, but that game isn't out yet, and I didn't partake in the beta testing that was public a few months ago, so I decided I would celebrate the upcoming release by taking a look back at all the previous Sonic racing games. More than anything, it's a chance for me to talk about Sonic racing games I didn't review in the past: Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, and Team Sonic Racing. Observant or longtime viewers will probably know that I have covered every other Sonic racing game before. However, my looks at Sonic Drift and Drift 2 and Sonic R were in a video from almost 5 years ago, and it's also been 4 years since I talked about Sonic Rivals and Sonic Riders, so I'll briefly give new takes on these games for the sake of making the video feel complete. But I won't focus on old topics for too long, to make sure the video doesn't feel redundant. But before I even think about it, we need to discuss the most supremely exciting partnership that I've got with Crystal of Atlan, which is a brand new game that is a cross-platform Magic Punk MMO action RPG. Players can immerse themselves as members of the Thornbird Adventurers Guild and uncover the secrets of the Crystal of Atlan with the team. What's super sick about this game is that it has smooth combos that are fluid and fun to execute while playing the game, with aerial combat as well, which really caught my attention given my taste in action games leaning heavily towards that sort of thing. Players will have multiple classes to choose from, like the Musketeer, the Gunner, the Swordsman, or the Bounty Hunter, all available from the start with over 20 skill combinations, which gives you a lot of toys to play around with as you engage in tough team battles and PvP gameplay. New classes, including the Fighter class and the Magician class, have been revealed on social media, as a lot of new content will be shown in their social media today as part of the pre-registration period, with many more to come when the game launches on May 28th. All set in an interesting world where magic and technology combine. If that interests you, which I know it does, you're going to want to pre-register. You can sign up to claim exclusive rewards and unlock early access, link in the description. There will even be pre-registration events and rewards for those who do sign up early. The game will be available on Google Play, the App Store, PlayStation, and PC. Best look into it now before it releases on May 28th. Thanks again to Crystal of Atlan for sponsoring this video. Now, back to your regularly scheduled programming. As I said, I've covered every Sonic racing game before besides the most recent 3. For the first 3 Sonic racing games from the 90s, I covered them all in my 90s Sonic spin-off video. It was a speed round kind of video where I discussed a bunch of games in very rapid succession, with a special focus on Knuckles Chaotix and Sonic 3D Blast. Reason being that there wasn't a lot to say about many of the games covered in that video. But now, here I am replaying Sonic Drift and Drift 2, both released on Sega's Game Gear handheld in the 90s. Credit to Sega, they were always willing to try difficult things with Sonic. Sonic Drift is a kart racer akin to Super Mario Kart, only it's on the Game Gear, a system that needed like 6 AA batteries for roughly 3 to 5 hours of playtime. The hardware was just not super powerful. This kind of game was a little ambitious for it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a super fun game to play in 2025. It's an interesting novelty being the first ever Sonic kart racer, but there isn't too much to it. You play as Sonic, Tails, Amy, or Dr. Robotnik and race through 6 tracks based on the levels of Sonic 1 in the Genesis. As the name suggests, you need to drift around corners to advance in the race. 3 laps around and you win. In order to anticipate when turns are coming, you look at the map on the top of the screen and your placement on it. However, that didn't really help me much because I was slipping and sliding all over the map. It felt really awkward to play as Eggman consistently passed me and won in almost every race. When you win a Grand Prix, you get a funny ending for the character you played as, but like I said, this game is as basic gets. There are 3 different Grand Prix options, but each one is the same 6 levels. Tracks are slightly different, but not by much. The game is just a product of its time. If you were a kid in the 2000s like me, you tried it on the Sonic Mega Collection Plus. And now, if you're a current owner of Sonic Origins, you can also try it, but there isn't much to see here. It wasn't even released in the US until Sonic Adventure DX on GameCube and Sonic Mega Collection Plus on PS2. So while I did try it as a kid briefly, it's not like I played it a lot. But despite Drift 1 not really being much to write home about, Drift 2 is an improvement. This game is also a product of its time, but again, it's nice to see improvement. In this one, the tracks have power-ups and obstacles on them to avoid, making the game more interesting to play. You also have more characters to play as: Sonic, Tails, Amy, Eggman, Metal Sonic, Fang, and Knuckles. The 3 different Grand Prix also have different levels, some based on stuff from Sonic 2 and others are totally original. So the game just has a lot more content than the original, which demonstrates improvement. The game also saw an international release, where it was still called Sonic Drift 2 despite the first game not leaving Japan for almost a decade. It is definitely a step up from the first one, and if you actually wanted to play a Sonic Drift game for fun, I'd say make it this one. It has more to offer than the original, but it is still a Game Gear kart racer. This is about as good as it was ever going to get. The next Sonic racing game was on a home console, Sonic R for the Sega Saturn, released in 1997. This game was developed by the studio Traveler's Tales. They were previously responsible for Sonic 3D Blast on the Genesis and the Saturn, and then they made Sonic R. Nowadays, they're most well known for the LEGO game franchise, but they've dabbled in the Sonic world before. Now, this game has always had a somewhat infamous reputation, but I was never sure of why. When I played it as a kid in the Sonic Gems collection, I thought it was alright. Anytime I revisited it as an adult, I also just thought it was alright, but today I decided to fire up the Saturn original version, and I must say, I am more understanding of this game having an infamous legacy after trying this version out. For starters, the draw distance is so low in this version, you can barely see an inch or two in front of you, and then the controls are so awkward. Jumping and turning should feel intuitive, but every character just doesn't feel good to control with super wide turns and sluggish movement. Playing it on the GameCube is so night and day, as this was based on the PC port of Sonic R, not the Saturn version. You can see everything coming now, which helps a lot because exploring the racetracks is a big part of the game. You need to collect 5 tokens in every track to unlock the extra characters on the menu screen, and you need to collect rings to access hidden routes to find the 7 Chaos Emeralds and unlock Super Sonic as a playable character. But yeah, this game on Saturn really sucked, but on PC/GameCube, it's alright. It's not super fun or anything, but it's alright. The major problem with it is just the lack of content. There are only a handful of tracks to race on, and the mechanics and characters aren't fun enough to work with to make up for that lack of content. Compare this to something like Crash Team Racing on PlayStation from 1999, and the difference is apparent, since that game had this story mode with cutscenes and voice acting and a hub world and multiple racetracks. It was a very complete kart racing package. Ultimately, a game like Sonic R wasn't going to cut it to save the failing Saturn in the West. I've gone into this in past videos, but Sega of America really dropped the ball with this console. It never getting a main series Sonic game certainly didn't help matters. Sonic R just being another title it had that didn't move the needle towards success, but it does have a killer soundtrack though. This is hotly debated. Some love it, some hate it. I love it. It was a weirdly odd choice to give this Sonic racing game this uber romantic emotional soundtrack that wouldn't be out of place on a Whitney Houston album, but still, these songs by Richard Jocks and sung by TJ Davis are real winners in my book. That's all I have to say on this game. The next 2 Sonic racing games debuted in 2006. I'm going to start with the portable one, Sonic Rivals, which was released on the PSP. The video I did on these games back in 2021 more than holds up and offers my full take on them, so if you haven't seen it, I'd say go check it out if you want to learn everything there is to know about Sonic Rivals and Sonic Rivals 2. Whereas my coverage of the Drift games and Sonic R was pretty dismissive back in 2020, so I thought I'd say something more on those games. But for people who just want a quick overview, the Sonic Rivals games are 2D side-scrolling racing games. They play like and have many conventions similar to other 2D Sonic platformers, but the goal is racing your opponent from one side of the map to the other. Along the way, you'll jump over obstacles and go through loops and dash pads and hit each other with power-ups. I've never played the Rivals games online or anything, so I don't know if that made them more fun, but yeah, they don't really hold up. Which always makes me sad to say, because I grew up loving these games. I remember when I first saw the trailer for Rivals 2 back on the Sega website in 2007, and I was blown away by how many characters this one game had, and I just had to have a PSP that fall, or else. And with that, I also got to experience many games in some of my other favorite franchises from back then, like Jak and Daxter and Ratchet & Clank. I got a lot of playtime out of my PSP, and the Sonic Rivals games were a pretty core part of that, but now, even that trailer is laughably shit when I look at it now. The games, though, there's just nothing to really say about them. The level design, as I'll explore in a soon-to-be-released video, is often quite bland and basic, littered with dash pads and automation. Especially in levels where you aren't racing, you really see how there's not much on offer throughout the game when it comes to speed and platforming and replayability. The plot that holds these games together are also some of the dumbest in series history. Rivals 1 sees Eggman's descendant from the future, Eggman Nega, try and take over the world with a camera that turns things into cards, his ultimate plan being to turn the entire planet into a card, which would somehow mean he wins while being trapped in the void of space. And then the heroes fight each other throughout the story for ludicrously contrived reasons. Characters fighting each other for no reason is one of the franchise's favorite tropes during the 2000s, and these games were the poster child of that, since every level needed to cook up some new dumbass reason for characters who all have the same goal to fight each other. It's nice that these games gave characters who don't usually interact some time together though, like Silver teaming up with SBO in Rivals 2, or Shadow working alongside Metal Sonic. Rivals 2 having some of the most unique and obscure character interactions in the series because of these pairings, but the writing is putrid. 2 is the much better game than 1. Its levels are more fun, it has more things to do while you play like arena challenges and such, but neither game is super worth remembering unless you're nostalgic for them like I am. But fun fact, this is where most of the cast meets Silver the Hedgehog for the first time. He debuted in Sonic 06, but the storyline of that game was made into an alternate timeline because of time travel at the end of the game. so this being Silver's first appearance in the new timeline, though these games actually only released in English-speaking countries, never Japan, so make of that what you will. I've devoted a lot of time to the Sonic Riders series across the last 4 years of videos. I reviewed all 3 games in videos that hold up. In fact, Free Riders is still one of my all-time favorite videos I ever made. I also compiled those videos together and remastered the Zero Gravity review in said compilation. But if you missed all that, here's the rundown. Sonic Riders is not a beginner-friendly game. It's a very skill-oriented game and can be quite annoying and difficult to even consider enjoying to someone who hasn't played it before and doesn't have the time nor interest to become good at it. But if you are someone who's been playing Sonic Riders for the better part of 2 decades, this is one of my all-time favorite racing games. It, like previous Sonic racers, doesn't have a lot of content and characters, but the mechanics certainly carry it. Playing on these cool hoverboards, you do tricks you need to time right to land perfectly to get the best rank and find shortcuts and such. It never gets old no matter how much I play it. It's just a very stylish game. The animated intro is one of the coolest the franchise has ever had. The story contains some fun moments and likable characters with cartoony animation and entertaining sequences. And the skill floor is high in Sonic Riders, and the skill ceiling is even higher, but that just makes the game more appealing than ever for me. It's not going to be for everyone, but it absolutely is for me. I love skill-based replayable games. It is, for my money, the best Sonic racing game ever made. Kart racing is fine for Sonic, he's a mascot platformer and kart racing is just what they do, but sick hoverboards doing tricks through a futuristic city, that just screams Sonic to me a lot more than driving go-karts. Especially capturing the energy of the Sonic franchise back in the 2000s. Even if the gameplay won't be like Riders 1, I'm glad the hoverboards are coming back in the new game. The sequel to Riders, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, really honed in on that aesthetic that made the original great. Its menus and music just have this sick futuristic vibe that was instantly iconic. Mechanically though, I thought it was a step back. The tracks are fine and well designed enough, it's got good unlockables and fun to use characters, but I just never liked how they simplified the trick system to be about pressing one button at the right time. It was just much cooler to have direct control over your tricks with the analog stick. But this game was made for broader accessibility, especially because it was taking advantage of the Wii's big audience and motion controller gimmick to sell the game. I still like Zero Gravity enough, think the music and vibe really carries it for me. Like, look at these sick-ass CG cutscenes. But the game itself is just alright. Sonic Free Riders for the Xbox 360 Kinect is like the worst game ever, though. As stated, my review of this game from 2022 holds up very well. If you're an adult playing Free Riders, you will be in for a hell of a time. You'll need to jump around and squat and lean and kick and swim in rapid succession, and it will get very sweaty very fast. But I beat the entire game on original hardware. The Kinect is just so unresponsive that it makes the entire game an utter chore to play. Definitely one of the worst games I have ever had the displeasure of suffering through, but it made for great content. But that doesn't have to be where the story ends, though. The Sonic modding scene has done wonders with the Riders series. Sonic Riders DX and Sonic Riders Tournament Edition extended the shelf life of that game by adding more characters and online to it, and some tweaks to make it flow even better. And then the mod Sonic Riders Regravified added many fixes to that game. I talked about these mods in my older Riders videos, but then in 2023, Free Riders shockingly got a mod to be playable with a controller, and it made the game go from the worst thing ever to pretty alright. Who knew? I didn't see that coming, but I praised the hell out of that mod in a separate video I made on it. It just went to show the power of the dedicated Sonic modding scene yet again. But the worst thing about Free Riders wasn't even the gameplay, it was how it killed the Sonic Riders franchise. We got these games every other year before, and then this one being so bad just ended the whole thing, in favor of the newer kart racing series that also kicked off in 2010. And man, what a great segue that was. Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing was released on every console in 2010. I'm just going to focus on the main HD version. As the name suggests, it wasn't just a Sonic racing game, but a crossover of various Sega franchises, including Space Channel 5, Samba de Amigo, Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, Virtua Fighter, Shenmue, and even more obscure stuff like Alex Kidd or Bonanza Bros. This game actually wasn't the first Sonic crossover with other Sega games, though. The first I can think of was Sega Superstars, a game for the PS2 iToy gizmo. I've never played this game, but from what I can tell, it was a collection of mini-games with a motion control gimmick. Then multiple consoles got a game called Sega Superstars Tennis. Hilarious thing about me and other fans is that you can really just put Sonic's face in the box and get us to buy anything. I could have cared less about any other tennis game as a kid, but hey, Sonic is in it and he gets an epic shot in the trailer, so sign me up. But yeah, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing came out in 2010, and I played this game a decent bit as a kid. My cousin and I would race each other on the tracks I had unlocked, but it was also not my favorite game by any means. So I haven't played it in well over a decade. I used to have it for Xbox 360, but now I'm playing it on PC via Steam. Seeing it start up with this old-looking launcher thing had me concerned. Never know how well an old PC port of a game is going to work on a PC from 2025 until you get into it, but here, it had all the options you'd expect, like model and shadow quality and the resolution. Although for some reason, the game would only go up to 1440p when my monitors are 4K, but once you get into the game, it works pretty great. But the thing is, these kinds of games aren't really my cup of tea. That's why I haven't played this game in so many years, because I can appreciate kart racing games or fighting games in quick bursts with friends or whatever, but I just don't get super into them because games with the multiplayer element as their core component don't do much for me. I like having a single player mode, like Sonic Riders has that story mode where they tried to do the SA2 formula but in a racing game and made it sick as hell. Having said that, I think All Stars Racing is fun for what it's worth. If you're playing single player like I did for this video, the game has a decent supply of content. You got missions to play that give you objectives to follow on the tracks, there's free races, time attacks, and the Grand Prix mode where you do 4 races back to back. Completing races gives you Sega points which you use to unlock extra characters, stages, and free play or music. This gives you more reason to see all the game has to offer and play it repeatedly, which was enough incentive for me back in 2010. What helps is that the game has basic but good controls. Regardless of whether you're in Sonic's basic car or Shadow's motorcycle, you hold down a single button to accelerate and then one of the bumpers to drift around corners. The challenge of the game is holding the drift to get a huge boost in speed when you let go of the button. Getting the turns right and the boost after is pretty satisfying. And while racing, you get to use power-ups against your enemies in typical kart racer fashion. The game puts emphasis on the character-specific all-star moves, which you get if you're in the back of the pack so you can catch up. But it's nothing mind-blowing if you've played any other game in the genre before. I appreciated how many tracks it had though, given how many of these other games fell kinda short with the track list. Many of them here will have the same visual theme but with different level design, but there were enough level themes for me to forgive that. The Grand Prix mode taking you through every track in the game. Though, if I do have one recommendation, it's that if you're only going to play the Grand Prix once, definitely play on Advanced or Expert mode. Beginner mode is so easy that I was leading the race by several seconds right after the race started. Advanced mode was a proper balance where I won often, but I thought it was earned. But then Expert mode was absolutely psycho. Power-ups were all over the screen and the other races were ruthless. But yeah, there's nothing really exciting about this game in 2025. Like, I wouldn't tell you to play it if you haven't. It's a fairly generic kart racer, but it's a good game. And I have fond memories of it from back in 2010, especially because of the line of action figures it got from Jazzwares. Loved those. And I also liked how this was the very last game we heard the 4Kids Sonic voice cast in. No new lines were recorded, as it was all reused stuff from previous games like Shadow or 06 or Rivals and Riders, but still, this was their final credit in the series before the new cast arrived in Free Riders and Colors. So it's got nostalgia for all those reasons, but the game itself is nice, but little more. But what I've always been told is that the sequel, Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed, was quite a vast improvement. However, funnily enough, I've never played it before. I remember the day the trailer dropped back in 2012, because I was in 5th grade then. I wasn't explicitly hyped, because as I said, these kinds of kart racing games don't really do much to make me actively excited, but I figured I'd play it when it came out over the holiday season in 2012, but I never did. Never felt the need to ask for the game, and anytime I had the cash to buy games, I was just never interested in getting this one, even though I had the chance a few times. I was a relatively early adopter of the Wii U console, and I still didn't get this game, even though it was a launch title for the Wii U. But yeah, years went by and I just never touched it. A few years ago, I got it and the first game on Steam, and I loaded them both up for the first time for this video. I was scared at first, because the game wouldn't load because of an error message that said it was already running, so I couldn't get the game to start until I deleted this file from the install folder. Like the first game, it had a launcher with PC-specific options. This one does go up to 4K, so it works perfectly with my monitors, thank the Lord. After running through the Grand Prix, my verdict was this game was a lot better than the first one. The controls felt a lot better as you accelerate with the right trigger and drift with the left trigger. It felt more natural than the first one. Drifting even feels more satisfying, as the time it takes to get each level of boost felt longer in this one, so that when you get that level 3 boost and the game announces it on the screen, it feels more like an accomplishment. But the main thing that made Transformed much more fun to play than the original is its new gimmick. Every character drives a car by default, but they can each turn into a boat or a plane if need be. The front of the box showcasing that feature pretty well. It sounds really small, but it's not something you see in every kart racer you play. Like I said, I thought All-Stars Racing was a good game, but by the standards of a kart racer, it wasn't doing anything super original. Here, tracks will have the normal shortcuts you can take on land, but sometimes tracks will just go into the water or in the air. Sometimes you'll be on land in lap 1, but on the water in lap 2. It just adds way more variety to the levels. and it gives you something to experiment with, like this race where I was on the water, but I saw other racers jump off the ramp and fly into the air. So next lap I tried it to see if it was saving me any time, and I felt like it did. It's a simple new feature, but I think it really carries the game and gives it more depth while racing than the first game could ever dream up. I did like using Sega points to buy new characters in the original more. This time, character unlocks are tied to the mission mode, but I was only playing the Grand Prix to get a taste of racing on the various tracks, so I didn't get to use Shadow in this one since he isn't unlocked at the start like he was in the last game. But, to stick to the bright side, I liked how you can increase and decrease the difficulty of the Grand Prix as you go between the cups, instead of having to play through them all on each difficulty like the first one. I thought the levels themselves had more variety than the last game too. I saw various stage themes from Sega titles old and new. Some had the benefit of using assets from recent games like Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations, but in a racing spin-off, that's a-okay in my book. It allows the game to have more content, and it definitely all works. Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed is pretty much everything you'd want from a sequel. It's like the original, but more fun and more worth playing. As of now, it's the best Sonic kart racer ever made. It feels the most rewarding and replayable. It's still a game people play online to this day, 13 years later. One of the reasons I picked it up on Steam a couple years back is because my friends were casually replaying it in like 2021 when the game was almost a decade old. I didn't join them because the download speed at my parents' house was ludicrously bad, so I just bought the game, thinking maybe I'd play it one day, and now, I am. I don't have much to say about it, but it's a really well done kart racing game. However, while it was the best Sonic kart racer to date, it was not the most recent. Team Sonic Racing from 2019 is a game that, like Transformed, I never played. But unlike Transformed, I was doing that for a reason. The development team, Sumo Digital, who did All-Stars Racing and Transformed, returned for another Sonic racing game. But this time, it was not a Sega crossover, but just a regular spin-off in the Sonic universe. But folks, I avoided this game like the plague. Now that Sonic is doing so well, I think it's fair to look back and say that things were not great just a few years back. I've gone into this backstory in many videos, but to talk about how we got from a game like Transformed to Team Sonic Racing, let me break it down one more time. So, Sega signed an exclusivity deal with Nintendo to have Wii U Sonic exclusives. The Wii U was a flop. So those Sonic games like Sonic Lost World and Sonic Boom were also flops. Sonic Boom was especially devastating because that game and the cartoon it was promoting were meant to bring in a new age of Sonic fans and be a big licensing powerhouse. But the show didn't capture a huge audience and the games were horrendous and sold poorly. This dealt a body blow to the Sonic IP. So when we got the next main series game, Sonic Forces, in 2017, it was a low-budget game that I thought was terrible in nearly every aspect. Sonic Forces was just doing what it could, though, because the brand was at one of its all-time low points post-Boom. Sonic Mania, also from 2017, being the only well-liked Sonic game between Transformed and Sonic Frontiers. Literally the only one. Team Sonic Racing came out in the post-Forces, pre-Sonic movie world, and so I was never interested in it. I lost interest in Sonic as a teen because of Lost World and Boom, and I got back into it before Forces and Mania, and then I thought Forces sucked, so why wouldn't I skip TSR? I didn't even play Transformed. Back in 2019, I didn't have the financial incentive to play every new Sonic game that I currently do, because I had like 6 Sonic videos at the time, and only one of them was worthy of note. TSR came out in a bleak time for Sonic, before the movies and Frontiers brought it back to life. In fact, TSR came out in the atmosphere of that first Sonic movie trailer that looked diabolical. And so I wasn't really interested in it. But hey, Sonic is in a better place now, so I'm here to play the game and close the video by giving my thoughts on it. Perhaps this is an anticlimactic statement after all that build-up, but yeah, the game was fine. Especially if you got the game at a discount. But I have notes. The game feeling kinda cheap is visible from the start. Like, look at these menus. The pictures are just stock renders of the characters standing, but they're in the car, not even like new poses of them driving. Compare this to the production value of Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled, which came out the same year. This game just looks really cheap by comparison. Or even compared to Mario Kart 8, which originally came out years before this. But at least the game booted up without issue since it's a modern PC game. That was appreciated. And it was nice to get a new Crush 40 song in the intro. The whole soundtrack is also fantastic, with lots of good remixes of Sonic tracks, old and new. But besides that, I didn't have much good to say about the game's presentation. The gameplay is fine, like if you were buying this game for a kid in the Switch, Mario Kart 8 would be better, but this is plenty serviceable. The gameplay of TSR is like Transformed, just not as good. The controls are equally responsive, but I think the removal of the Transform gimmick brings it back to the first game where things are really bland in the greater kart racer genre. Especially noticeable when some of the tracks in TSR are direct copies of levels from All Stars Racing and Transformed. It just kinda makes me miss those games, even the first one. The new team gimmick and focus on Wisp power-ups in this game kinda detracted from the experience more than anything else. The Wisps because it's all been seen and done before in the Sonic series. I never thought Wisps were super compelling outside of colors anyway. But this is back when Sega was in love with them, so here they are. Then the team gimmick does have an interesting application, because races in this game give you points, and you get more points for your teammates getting higher places in the race. Like if your team was the top 3, your team will just get the most amount of points. But if you were first place and then other teams had placed higher than your teammates, they might get more total points than your team, which will give you incentive to use items and trade items with your teammates so that they can all get ahead in the race. But early on in the campaign, the team gimmick made the game a little easy since it was only 2 teams going head to head at first. The team gimmick isn't bad, I just didn't really think it made the game any more fun to play than All Stars Racing when, like I said, I thought Transformed felt like a real step up. The customization of vehicles is neat and the character roster is mostly alright. Don't know why Omochow is teamed up with Amy and Big and not Cream, and I don't know why they'd stick Vector with Silver and Blaze as opposed to his actual team, and I still laugh at how hard Sega was pushing Zavok as a character back then, but the rest is pretty expected, like Team Sonic and Team Dark. My real issue with this game is that I just thought the single player element was really boring. And then, from what I was told, the online really wasn't popping off even like a week after the game came out. The campaign is just super repetitive in this. There are multiple chapters, and in each one you'll have to do various races and a Grand Prix to clear each one. But what made the campaign start to wear on me was how you play so many of the same racetracks again and again. I've criticized previous Sonic racing games for a lack of total content, but riders just taking you through the main races once per campaign is definitely preferable because the pace was pretty good. When you'll be done with one chapter in this game is the time it takes to beat the hero side story of Riders or Zero Gravity. Now, if there was an interesting plot to merit this much campaign, maybe I wouldn't mind, but holy smokes does it not have that. People could complain about the writing of the 2020s games all they want to, and I have in the past, but playing TSR for the first time is enough to make me think, damn, we've got it pretty good now. I mean, the entire story is just so boring. A mysterious Tanuki called Dodon Paz invited all the heroes to race, and almost every scene is the characters calling him on how he might actually be pretty suspicious or evil, and then he'll laugh it off, and then Big will say that he's actually pretty cool, and Sonic will be like, yeah, but I'm gonna make everyone eat my dust in this race! And you just repeat that over and over and over again. And the presentation in these cutscenes shows the low budget more than anything else. Just PNGs sliding on the screen like it's a DS game, only if it was on PS4 in 2019. When it was announced this game was getting a story mode, I just assumed it would have those shitty looking Forces cutscenes, and I was still left disappointed. The cutscenes in Free Riders were more visually stimulating and had better dialogue, and that bar was in hell. But yeah, Team Sonic Racing is not a bad game per se. I think it plays like the previous games, so that means it's a solid kart racing experience, but as I said, there are a million other options that do it better than Team Sonic Racing. When the online is dead and the story mode is a bore, TSR isn't really giving me much of a reason to ever want to come back to it in the future. But hey, let's end on a positive note. Despite the fact that TSR was roughly what I was expecting it to be from my old low expectations, I'm thinking Sonic Racing Cross Worlds has a pretty decent chance of being good. As I said, we live in 2025 and the Sonic series has soared in popularity. The movies have done for the brand what Sonic X did in the 2000s and what Sonic Boom was supposed to do in the 2010s. It has brought a lot of new eyes on Sonic, and most importantly, budget. Shadow Generations from last year was a big step up in presentation and everything else from Sonic Frontiers, both games being huge hits by series standards. So I think this racing game might actually pull through and have some cool new features and have higher production values. Things to make it stand out from the other racing games, but only time will tell. We'll have to find out when the game comes out. In the meantime, I hope everyone enjoyed this brief look back at the Sonic Racing games and looks forward to playing the new game and my inevitable video on it. But that's about all the time we have for today, so I'll close by saying the same thing I always do. If you made it this far into the video, I thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.